All right, it's going to give you about 10 or 15-second delay on YouTube, but see if this sound check works, and this will be a fun video for anybody who wants to find it later.
Hey, Sue. Travail, travail? 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 Never really knows what that word means.
I can't hear an echo at all. All right, let's raise the voice. We gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. He chastens and hastens His will to make known. The wicked oppressing now cease from distressing. Sing praises to His name, He forgets not His own. That's okay? Ah. Anybody got a piece of pipe cleaner? I need to put something in the top of this so it stops sliding down my face. Ugh. Let's try something else. I don't see a spot in here to do that. I think I ought to have one. If I'm going to sing the words for this music video. Yeah, this is pulling on my ears. Ugh. Go back to this guy. 1, 2. Am I on? Of course not. This doesn't have any reach. I'm over here and it's over there. If I put it in here, it's going to be on the pedals. Well, I wonder if we can sit next to me. Let's come down for it. Next to me. That's about it. That's what I can get. And that's almost. Look. And I can. Otherwise, I gotta really project. Yeah. Make sure I'm turned on. Come on, Pat. Tick-tock. Ready? How about this? Is that on? Oh yeah, I can hear that. All right, let's give this a try. Noctes urgentes vigilemus omnes. Better? Good, let's go with that. Keep it at that volume. That'd be fine. Turn you off. Ugh. My goal is to say how many verses of the songs. How are you going to stop? Okay. It's trying to make up for the months that we missed.
Yeah, right. Catching back up. Now that we're open again, it's trying to catch back up. Trying to be your, maybe it's, what, 20-hour service this morning?
Well, you know, I have to keep with time on the service. If it's 15:03, you know.
I think it's going an hour a minute, so it's,
Did you say a 20-hour sermon?
yeah, an hour a minute.
So. Well, this is the day the Lord has made, and we are gathered here today to rejoice and to be glad in it. So if you notice me looking at my phone today, it's for a very simple reason, because the clock in the back is spinning around at about an hour every 30 seconds. So I had no idea when to start worship this morning. But we are glad to be back in worship in our sanctuary. We are streaming on YouTube right now, and I'm hoping that comes through well. For those of you who are on YouTube, if there needs to be some tweaks with the sounds or something, we're going to work on that. It's kind of hard to hear both ways as things go. But as we are here, we rejoice, and just a couple of announcements for those of you who are here, that as you leave, you notice we don't have bulletins today, again, just so that we don't have papers laying around in that. But we do have a sheet, not a whole lot of announcements this week, that'll be handed to you if you want one as you go to keep up on any announcements, and we're going to do that going forward. But with that, let us begin our time together today in an attitude of prayer. You should be able to go down to there, Jim. There. Let us pray together. Search us, O God, and know our hearts. Test us and know our thoughts. We gather with eager longing to know you, ever-present God, and to be known by you. We want to live as your beloved children. Assure us that in the moments that you hear our prayers, even as your will is revealed to us, fill our dreams and our waking hours with radiant hope. May every time of encounter move us to awe and fervent worship. Lead us in your way everlasting. Amen.
We gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. He chastens and hastens his will to make known. The wicked are pressing, now cease from distressing.
Good morning. Would you all please stand to the call to worship? The call to worship this morning is Psalm 139, verses 1 through 12 and 23 and 24. O Lord, you have searched me and known me.
You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar.
You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways.
Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it all together.
You pursue me behind and before. You lay your hand upon me.
Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it.
Whither shall I go from your spirit?
Or whither shall I flee from your presence?
If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there.
If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me.
If I say, let only darkness cover me, and the light about me be night,
Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you.
search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts.
See if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Amen.
Glory be to the Father, the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever, world without end. Amen. Number 6. You may be seated. There, you should hear me now as we come to this time of prayer. I would ask you, during that time when we lift up our prayers, pause for a moment. I'm going to try and repeat those just because there's not a microphone out in the sanctuary for people who may hear on YouTube for these prayers. But let us pray. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this opportunity to be back together, to see one another face to face, even though we are masked. And we ask that you would move within our hearts in such a way that the only masks we wear might be these masks of cloth, that we would not hide ourselves from you or from one another, but to avail ourselves of your grace and the spirit of your people as they encourage us in faith. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers. And so it is that we do pray to you, Father, for our church, for this congregation especially, that as we return here to this place, that we may be faithful, not only in our worship, but that we may rekindle the ways we desire to serve you in the world and to serve your people. Make our ministry fruitful, that people may be blessed by the work of your Son, Jesus Christ, working in us. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. And we pray today always for our Bishop Sally, for our District Superintendent Fabiola, who messaged me just a moment ago that she was praying for us as we return. We pray for all those other United Methodist churches with whom we are in connection, and for all churches, that indeed we may see hope through the haze and promise through that which you are revealing. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers. Father, we do pray to you today for all those who grieve, for our brother Laverne, trusting that indeed you have received grace, or received Jane with your grace. For all those who mourn today, we ask your blessing. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. We pray today for all those afflicted with cancer, especially now when the isolation of their treatment has become so much more pronounced. Father, that you would make your presence known with them, sustain them with your strength. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers. And now, Father, we ask that you would hear the prayers we bring before you now, not with our single voices, but with the one voice of your church. For Mike and Jody. For Marion and healing. For Connor as he returns to school. For Rita. For Jeff. for Carl and his dementia, and that he might recover fully from his bout with COVID. For the joy that Jordan has graduated. I'm going to repeat that just so that it goes out that it's not just that Jordan graduated, that she passed her boards, which often is more challenging than getting through school, but that she has had so much support to do that and to make this not just her accomplishment, but ours as well. And Father, I do ask your prayer in these coming weeks as we hear different proposals for schools opening in the fall, that you would be with not only the students, but the teachers and staff who must address their own concerns, fears, and hopes, that they might find comfort and peace in you and a resolve to go forth trusting in you for their health and what decisions that means. For all of these, Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers. And now, let us be bold to pray with the words that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Our scripture reading this morning comes from the book of Romans, chapter 8, verses 12 through 25. So then, brethren, we are debtors, not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of sonship. When we cry, Abba, Father, it is the Spirit himself bearing witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him in order that we may also be glorified with him. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to fertility, not of its own, but by the will of him who subjected it in hope. Because the creation itself will not be set free from its bondage to decay and obtain the glorious liberty of the children of God. We know that whole creation has been growing in travail together until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait for the adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we are saved. Now hope is that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
You stand as you are able for the reading and the hearing of the gospel. From St. Matthew's account, the 13th chapter. Jesus put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? He answered them, An enemy has done this. The slaves said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he replied, No, for in gathering the weeds you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at the harvest time I will tell the reapers, Collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples approached him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age, when the Son of Man will send his angels and will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. You may be seated. If you would pray with me. O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. You know, sometimes it doesn't come to me till I'm standing up here and reading the scripture, but you know, we're out here trying to plant good seeds, and I can just see all the weeds that just keep popping up. I was here till 12:30 last night because these gremlins somehow between Thursday and Saturday crept into the computer. Not only at home, here, but at home. I spent about 5 hours yesterday getting past Windows' new update. Fortunately, my sermon was most of the way saved. I had to go back and find the places it didn't make sense because it didn't save some chunks of it. But when we were hearing Scott just a moment ago sing "We Shall Overcome," it can often seem like a strange song of preparation. But right now, last week I started a sermon series, and it's going to go for about 6 weeks. It's called Broken, Good News Through Tough Times. And this idea of overcoming is important because, you know, we live in an age of immediate gratification. And so during these next several weeks, I'm hoping we will explore where and how we can experience God's grace in the middle of our brokenness and the troubles of our lives, and even in pain. And last week I began by talking about the spirit and body connection, and recognizing that rather than focusing merely on the worldly state of our problems, that we also need to look at our spiritual problems that inhibit our ability to claim God's healing. Today, we're going to look at pain. In that passage that Scott read a moment ago, Paul talks about labor pains. You know, our first impulse, though, I think when we talk about pain or anything that causes us get discomfort is what? To get rid of it. You know, sort of like that desire that those servants had to just go out and rush out and just start ripping out those weeds from the field. And yet sometimes that can actually do more harm than good. You see, Jesus is telling them that God's grace will overcome even those things that persist and that keep causing us to worry. And so let's look at pain. Why does God allow us to have pain? Why does he allow us to suffer? You know, if he really loved us, wouldn't he give us relief like that? I mean, what are we supposed to do with this? I think the first thing we need to recognize, though, is pain isn't necessarily a bad thing. It really isn't. It serves a good purpose. It protects us. A perfect example is Hansen's disease. Leprosy. You know, it used to be, I remember seeing a comic once, and it's totally not politically correct, but this was back in the 70s, a comic image of a lepers colony on an island, and there was one of those "You Are Here" signs. It says you are here and here and here and probably over here. Because what happens with leprosy is that body parts fall off. And it used to be people thought that was just what leprosy did. And it wasn't an unreasonable assumption. Somebody has leprosy and parts of their body die and fall off. And it is related to the disease, but actually what's happening is that leprosy affects the nerves and the sensation of touch, and it prevents the afflicted person from experiencing pain. And that's where the problem comes in. The person doesn't notice minor injuries. They don't notice infections setting in. And by not noticing those things, they don't take care of them. That is, until the infection kills them or things start to drop off. You know, the disfigurement that leprosy brings into life is caused as much, if not more, not by the bacteria that causes the disease, but by the absence of pain. You know, think about it. Pain in that context protects us. It tells our hand to pull away from a hot pot before we get scalded. It tells us to move away from those thorns before we get too scratched up and exposed to infection. Pain can actually be a good thing. And it can be a good thing not only because it keeps us from injury, but because it can lead us to seek help. In the context of a broken limb, maybe a broken heart, or even a broken spirit. And this isn't to say that pain is pleasant. But by definition, pain is unpleasant. Pain itself isn't good, but what it can lead to can be something good. I mean, think about it. The pain of exercise tells us that we're on our way to fitness. And at the same time, it tells us when it's time to rest. See, it's how we approach pain that not only affects our perception of it, but our ability to discover hope. And so we come to this discussion of pain because St. Paul referred to sufferings of the current age as if they were labor pains. Now, I'll admit, this is one of those places where a woman preacher would have a great advantage over me. You know, except for some annoying employees in my previous life, that's what labor pains were to me. But that's not what Paul's talking about here. You know, I've never experienced, nor will I ever experience labor pain, but you know what? It still fascinates me. You know, I have heard women describe the pain of giving birth, the incredible discomfort of labor, and then they're anxious to go get pregnant again and have another one. There is a myth. I looked it up because until I looked it up for this sermon, I actually believed this myth that women forget about the pain after the baby's born. It's just not true. Oh, yeah, I see heads shaking. Yeah, it's not true. But what is true is that the experience of giving birth affects how they remember and make sense of the pain. Professor Ulla Waldenström, a Swedish researcher, did several studies related to women and their experience of labor. And in one study, following about 2,000 women who gave birth, they were asked to evaluate their experience 2 months after giving birth, at 12 months, and then 5 years later. And what she found was that the women who had a good experience with the birth process, that they were much less inclined to focus on the pain of labor. These were the women who, although they didn't forget the pain, were more likely to rate it less negatively. Women who didn't have a good experience, however, were more inclined to rate the pain as more severe years later. The good professor took good care to take into account good or poor experience by accounting for the experience of pain in the moment. It wasn't that the good experience of labor involved less pain. One thing that she and other researchers found was that regardless of the pain, that when women were given the baby to hold right after the delivery, that they were much less likely to rate the pain, or much more likely to rate the pain as positive. In effect, what they discovered is that when the pain had meaning beyond the pain, that these women experienced something good and positive. And that's what Paul is talking about. You know, the early Christians, they wanted to see Jesus return soon, like now. And they were starting to feel this pain because that didn't happen. And they were being shunned by family and friends. They were being persecuted in the community. And some of them were probably just about ready to give up. Some of them did. Let's face it, some of them probably did. Because if pain is meaningless, we try to avoid it and we try to get rid of it. And it makes perfect sense. But for the most part, pain isn't meaningless. It calls us to safety. It calls us to seek help. It calls us helps us to even receive greater joy if we look for the promise beyond. And see, God allows us to experience pain not as punishment. That's one of those things that people say, well, God is putting you through this because you must have done something. He does it not. He allows us to experience pain not to chastise us, but so that we can find our way to healing. To know that we need healing and to draw us toward Him and to keep us focused on the hope of the gospel. You know, I'm not suggesting that we should rejoice in all our aches and pains. Physical pains call for treatment and relief, but those other pains and challenges in life should encourage us to, boy, it did cut out a lot of my sermon. Those other pains and challenges in life should challenge us to look for God's promises, you know. One of the things Windows cut out of my sermon yesterday. You know, I was thinking of the challenges we have going on in our culture right now. We have demonstrations going on against racism. And we would say, what pain do we feel? But the thing is, you know, some kind of pains are chronic and mild and they're irritating. And the truth is, for us white people, it tends to be more of an irritant than a severe pain until there's a flare-up. But the thing is, if we ignore the irritation and what our role is in it, to realize that we're hurt by racism too, we're not going to do anything about it. I mean, right now, when this comes up, it's a call that we have to act and say, where can we be agents of healing? The Me Too movement reminds us, the things that I thought were normal to say to girls when I was in high school were totally out of line. But it just was the way the world was, and I didn't hear that pain. And so sometimes we're afraid that by asking questions or talking to somebody that's hurting, that their pain may be directed at us. And the truth is, it's not. People want to be heard so that they can be comforted. And so we are called to that kind of life. We don't necessarily cause it. Sometimes we do. But God is calling us to not ignore brokenness. Especially when it makes us uncomfortable. But to go to that brokenness and to find the place where maybe we can start to be made well together. You're all going to pray for me that this goes better than last week. There we go. I think that's where it goes. Oops. Oh, glued the wrong part, wouldn't you know it. This is supposed to be an example of, that the healing isn't immediate, that it takes time. But as that time goes on, we can trust that, well, I'll be darned. That as time goes on, God will lead us to restoration and to healing. Amen. Let us pray together. Thanks be to God, O Lord Jesus Christ, for all the benefits which thou hast given us, for all the pains and insults which thou hast borne for us. O most merciful Redeemer, friend and brother, may we know thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, and follow thee more nearly for thine own sake. Amen.
Christ is alive, let Christians sing, His cross sends empty to the sky. Let streets and homes with
Now, let us go forth confident that God sent his Son, Jesus, who he himself knew pain, that he didn't run from it, but that he saw what lied beyond it. Let us go forth claiming the promises of God and persisting in whatever travails we face, trusting that in him there is promise. And now may the blessings of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be with us today and always. Amen.